know we don't have a quorum. Oh, here's Danielle. I'm sorry, Daphne, I miscounted, but why don't you can give it to Amanda. And Danielle.
But we still don't have a quorum, right?
No, it's because we need 5, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with my report. So thank you to everyone who has joined us. Tonight we'll take a look at the 2018-19 voter analysis report published earlier this year and hear from NYC Vote staff on the contents of this report. In the report, we examined the accomplishments and challenges that we faced helping New Yorkers participate fully in their elections over the past year. Our report starts on an exciting note. Voter turnout and registration rates rose significantly for the first time since 2002. Voters turned out in record-breaking numbers to cast ballots in one of the most dramatic midterm elections in recent memory. The report also covers the many exciting advancements in voting rights coming to New York. The highlight of the reforms passed in Albany so far this year is, of course, early voting, which will begin in November. We hope that everyone from our community partners to voting advocates have had a chance to dig into the report's in-depth analysis of demographic and voting data, which will help us better understand New York City's voting trends and patterns. Tonight's hearing will be a forum for anyone in attendance to provide feedback and recommendations on the report and on our work to reach New York City voters. We appreciate your participation in tonight's meeting and your commitment to helping more New Yorkers gain access to the voting booth. Before we get started, I have a few more important announcements. On June 25th, city voters will head to the polls for primary elections. This will be a particularly important election for voters in Queens, where there is a high-profile race for district attorney underway. In Brooklyn, voters will again cast ballots for City Council in District 45. Some of the candidates who appeared on the ballot in the May special election are actively campaigning in this race as well. Down ballot, voters throughout the city may find primaries for judicial offices and party positions. Our newly released online voter guide provides profiles for candidates in the district attorney and city council races and lists the name of all candidates for the other races as well. A print guide for City Council District 45 has been mailed to all registered eligible voters living in the district. It will begin arriving this week. To read the voter guide and find your poll site information, visit voting.nyc today. And with that, I will turn it over to the Campaign Finance Board's Executive Director, Amy Loprest.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Our staff is going to talk a little bit about our voter analysis report and the chair that the chair was just talking about. I just want to commend the staff because this year the report really focused on a deep dive in statistical analysis of the trends in voting and in what were the commonalities of low turnout districts and low registration districts, so that we can really focus our efforts on areas that really need the focus. And it's a great report, lovely to look at, but really, really useful for both our staff in planning our work for the future, but also for advocates who are working across the city to really see where there are pockets that need attention. So I know they're going to talk more about that, but I just wanted to point that out. One thing that the staff is doing on the campaign finance side is we are engaging in our what we call the 5 borough tour. And we have taken our new to the CFB and compliance trainings out to the communities. We will be holding trainings in each of the 5 boroughs. One, the new to the CFB training that is for people who are thinking about running for office, to give them an idea of what they need to think about and look for in planning their run. The other, which we'll repeat in all 5 boroughs, Bureaus is the first segment of our compliance training about how to comply with the public financing programs, rules, and regulations. We had the first one in Queens last Saturday. It was a rousing success. Over 45 people attended that training, so really a great start. The next one is Saturday, July 20th in Brooklyn. I'm sorry, not Saturday. That's the Saturday, July 20th is in the Bronx. The next one is Saturday, June 22nd in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Public Library. If you look on our website, you can see a link to RSVP for those trainings. Please come out. They should be informative. If you are thinking for running for office, or if you just want to become more familiar with the public financing program, please come to those trainings. And with that, I turn it over to our staff to talk about the report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Melillo. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Affairs here at the Campaign Finance Board. I'm really pleased to be able to talk about this year's report with you because, as Amy mentioned, this year we took the report in a slightly different direction than we have in years past, and really focused on providing this sort of deep cut analysis to lay some groundwork for our reports and our work moving forward. I think we had some really interesting findings because this was the first year we were able to factor in census data into our analysis and take a look at what demographic factors are really impacting voter turnout. Because as mentioned, 2018 was a much more, I think, exciting midterm year than most of us are used to. It was a year that sort of reversed this downward slide that was happening in voter turnout in the midterm elections. But there were some definite demographic factors that popped out as we were doing the work. What causes higher or lower turnout at the neighborhood level? So I'm just going to give a quick recap of what that is. We found certain factors had a positive impact on voter turnout in neighborhoods. And those factors included the percentage of a neighborhood that was African American, Latino, or Asian American, which is really, I think, something different than we saw in 2017, where diverse neighborhoods were really turning out at high rates, higher so than heavily white neighborhoods. Certain age groups had impacts on turnout. There wasn't necessarily a rhyme or reason to why that occurred. And the percentage of people in a neighborhood with an income between $35,000 and $50,000 had a positive impact on turnout, whereas no other income bracket actually appeared to matter. There were some factors that had a negative impact on neighborhood turnout levels. One clear trend we saw in 2018 was that the percentage of people with an education level that was less than a four-year college degree decreased in neighborhoods' turnout. This is not a surprise to those of us who do work registering people to vote and getting the word out, but the percentage of people who had moved within in a neighborhood in the past year also had a negative impact on turnout. So if people are moving around and sort of resettling in new apartments as their leases turn over, that's going to impact whether or not they go to the polls. One real takeaway from this report that I think we are factoring into how we look at doing outreach across the city is that we found the percentage of naturalized citizens in a neighborhood had a negative impact on turnout. I think a lot of times we talk about limited English proficiency as being the barrier at the polls, and that's what's preventing people from maybe fully participating. But we actually found this didn't have an impact on turnout whatsoever, and it was really naturalization that did. And I think this is sort of changing our lens somewhat as we look to how we increase engagement in those neighborhoods, particularly those with high percentages of naturalized citizens. And we're identifying areas of the city where high percentage of naturalized citizens sort of correspond with lowest voter turnout, to think about what tactics and strategies can we use as we look to improve our outreach. So those are really the headline findings. I won't go into much more than that, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that people have.
Rena?
Hi, I'm Sabrina Castillo, and I'm the Director of Partnerships and Outreach. In the report, like Amanda said, we took a different approach, and we were able to really analyze voting trends in New York and how that's going to help us plan for 2020 and 2021. And then there were some unique things that we did that were also new last year, and that was really identifying how to build long life voting habits. And before I introduce the two students who helped us do that through the Roosevelt Institute, I'd also like to say that we've started our summer street team summer internship, and all four of them are here. There's Maya, Emily, Kevin, and Olivia, if you guys can stand and see it. So they're here this summer to really help us look at this data and help us go out into the community. And I'd like to invite Maya and Olivia to talk about their experience and what it was to work with us to be able to work with kids voting and help us identify a program that could help us reach younger students. They actually trained and worked with students in middle school and grade school to be able to help us kind of do this. So the two microphones there, you guys can come and I'll let them talk a little bit about their experience. And you can read more about theirs in the report as well, and what it took to engage young voters.
Hi, my name's Olivia.
I'm Maya.
Maya and I are both NYU students, and over the last academic year, we had the pleasure of working with the student council at PS20, the Anna Silver School, which is on the Lower East Side. We worked with a group of 3rd through 5th graders who all applied to be on their student council, and we helped them develop like a student government program. The kids had a real election around Christmas time, which was really exciting, and they all had to register to vote, so they got to learn that process and begin like building that habit of being civically minded. But in addition to like building this lifelong habit of voting and being engaged with your government and learning the structure of how things work, we also wanted to emphasize that civic engagement goes beyond just what happens at the voting booth, and we really wanted to instill and like empower children to be active members of their community. And so Maya can tell you a little bit more about our curriculum.
Yeah. So we really, I think, took a two-pronged approach in how we did that. So we provided, we wrote and facilitated most of our curriculum with the help of a classroom teacher who worked at the school full-time. And so it was based around a mix of providing, hard information about how government works, but also relating that to how student government worked in their own community, as well as reflected the larger New York City community. And it was really with an emphasis on noticing the problems that you see around you, how they affect yourself as well as those who you care about, and thinking of solutions and implementing them. And so a couple of examples of that were things from starting an initiative to make their lunchroom cleaner and make sure people were recycling what should be recycled, but also to things like a kindness campaign, which we worked on with them for the second half of the year, which really centered around building compassion in the student body and recognizing that many students are going through things both at school and at home, and when you're angry or when you're hurt, you may take that out on other people. So we worked on how do you actually develop solutions, how do you talk about them with those who are capable of really implementing change, like elected officials or your principal. How do you talk about those solutions with them and get other people to care? You want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll be working throughout the summer. So if anybody has any initiatives or events where you would like for our interns to come and do a youth workshop or voter registration, you can let us know. And we're really excited about the work that we'll be doing this summer. I also like to note that we'll be continuing our work based on some of the findings here. So we'll be reaching out to different partners and people to really give us feedback on how we can further use the report as a resource to be able to help us really navigate and find solutions to increase voter participation.
Thank you for your work. It's just great, especially your perspective on how you were dealing with all the people. Do we go to street fairs over the summer and set up tables? Okay. Because I think having enthusiastic people at voter registration tables at street fairs would be a welcome change.
Yes. So we will go to street fairs. The next Thursday we'll be at a 5K at Prospect Park, but we also go to communities that will invite us in to their different initiatives. We're launching our partnership with Department of Youth and Community Development to do workshops at their summer employment orientations. So every orientation will have the opportunity to have a workshop and a voter registration where the students there range between like 16 to 24 years old, and they'll be going parted through our engagement process. But we're also open to other events that you might be a part of. You can send us a list, and we're more than happy to go out and do voter registration.
There's one other thing that I've always noticed, and I'm sorry I can't tell you the exact street, but there's a huge park that a gazillion people are in off Riverside Drive in the high 100s, and everybody is just hanging out and having a wonderful time. No, it's not Morningside. It's actually down almost by the river. And you're actually allowed to barbecue down there, and you don't need a permit. And so everybody's there, all families and everything, and having young, enthusiastic people there might be a good way to get more voter registration.
We'll look into it.
I mean, and so just, as Sabrina in her new role as Director of Partnership and Outreach, one thing that we're working, because we have a small staff to do these actual, live events, which we of course continue to do, but we're working to transition to have a broader impact, is to find community partners. So if you know community partners who are running a street fair, we are available to train them how to have their volunteers, even at the registration table, to provide voter registration forms. So because of the limited amount of resources we have, but it's certainly that's a way that we're looking at broadening our and reach across the city, because this is for people. Sabrina's regular staff is for people. But this that's certainly the different model that we're trying to work on, is to work with partners to broaden the reach, to train, to be like training of trainers to send out into the community.
Yeah.
One of the things I know that Brooklyn is probably the rest of the city, but since I live in Brooklyn, that's what borough I know best, are famous for their block parties. And it's if you have, maybe there's some way you can develop a plan for training people to conduct registrations at some of the larger block parties, like on your block, for example. Tell the rest of us to do that.
I think to add to what like Amy said, and to be able to really go into these neighborhoods and do that, is that we will be creating programs and platforms for people to be able to engage with us and get trained. So sort of like if we could say, hey, if you're having a block party, commit to doing a voter registration. One of the things that we've learned through our experience about being on the field is that you're more likely to say yes to a familiar face than an unfamiliar face. And so we really want to be able to empower communities, not only to register people, but to understand what it means to go through an engagement cycle and what it takes to get them to the polls. Because we understand that people will register to vote, but they won't show up to the polls. But if someone who if I know Danielle and she registered me, I know she's going to ask me, hey, did you vote? And I'm not going to want to say no to her, because no one wants to say no to Danielle, but so that is the model that we're going in. Over the next couple of months, we'll be sharing out plans on what the model partnership looks like. But we're excited about the new resources and tools that we'll be bringing to the table to be able to empower communities to be able to do these kind of engagement projects out in their community.
And, that's the one thing we can look into for block parties and street fairs. There's a permitting process. I don't remember which city agency does the parks but to look at, as part of their commitment, as part of the city's commitment to registered voters, to have them, as part of their permitting process, provide these kind of, at least the information about the tools to provide to the people who are sponsoring these events
That is a really great idea.
A local law 29 agency that we train as part of that mandate. And one of the things I think Sabrina and her team has been doing is looking into like what are ways we can treat agencies as partners, and where areas where our interests align. And I think the Department of Parks is like a natural place for that. I just realized, sorry, this wasn't on. I think the Department of Parks is a natural place where we could look to for that, and find a way to coordinate with them.
You could never do this, but the Philharmonic's going to be in various parks. You know, 'cause they have tons of people, and it's possible that neighborhood organizations, I don't mean to be making up assignments, but neighborhood organizations actually are there. So that would comport with what Amy was just saying about training people who can train.
We'll be looking into all the different organizations along with creating the proper resources and training tools that are needed to be able to launch this. And so we're in development with that along with all the goals that will drive us into 2021. And we hope that by the next VAAC meeting, we'll be able to really give a formal report on what those plans look like.
Yeah, this summer is one of transition from one model to another.
I have a question about the results of the report. Do you have any theories as to why the proportion of naturalized citizens has a negative impact on voter turnout? I mean, you would think people who go through the trouble of naturalizing would want to vote. It seems counterintuitive to me.
I think Sabrina and I have been discussing theories, and I think it requires some further research. But, one possibility is that people, through the citizenship process, I think we encounter this when we register people at naturalizations. Some people are really excited about becoming citizens. Some people are thrilled about being able to register to vote. And for other people, it's like a bureaucratic process they went through to be able to stay here, but it's not necessarily that they're connecting to our democratic process as part of becoming a citizen. So one of the things I think we're going to be doing is looking at various communities and just like talking to more people and figuring out where that disconnect is. And, we public affairs staff have been joining the partnerships and outreach team at naturalizations for the past few weeks or months. And I think even 2 weeks ago when I was there, I mean, you have some citizens who come up and you're like, oh, I don't remember the date. And they're like, I remember the date. This is a big deal for me. I'm becoming a citizen. I'm so happy. Like, I'm so excited to register. And other people are just like, no, I don't want to fill out paperwork. Like, I'm done with paperwork. Like, going through the citizenship process was enough. So, I think people just sort of connect to citizenship and democracy in different ways. And it's going to be on us to find out where that gap is.
Right, and I will add that I think when you go through that naturalized process, I think that for everyone in the room who's gone through the voting process or hasn't because they've decided not to, or out in the community as we're trying to engage with them, they already feel like there's a lack of information and barriers. And so this is a new group coming in who, while the system might have worked for them or not worked for them, or we don't know if the process they went through was an easy one or something that was challenging for them for various reasons, or something that they want to even talk about or relive for various reasons on why people come to this country. I think what ends up happening there is now we're asking them, hey, do this one step. And maybe they do register, but it doesn't mean they come out, because we already know voting is not something that's that easy, right? And we're asking them to take that extra step. So I think, like Amanda says, we'll be going out into the communities, really talking to people about what their process is, why they haven't voted, why they have voted. And I think we won't know until we really start talking to people about what this has been like for them and why some of the decisions have been made. And then we can really make an assumption and move forward on some strategies on how to engage them. But we'll really have to, like in any community that doesn't vote, we'll really have to make that connection for them, because I think that's where it lies, is that connection.
And I also think that there's some, oh, I'm sorry, but there's some additional, statistical research can be done because, we started here, but it's like figuring out, are there commonalities? Like it's certain kinds, community, naturalized citizens is a vast, statement. So it's like, figuring out, are there commonalities in, the areas and, to work to better focus what Sabrina's talking about, because that, is also important to really kind of understand where people are and is there some thing that we can work on, figure out which communities might need more focused attention.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have more work to do to sort of cross percentage of naturalized citizens with what are the different communities, what are the countries of origin, how long have they been here? There's more to plumb into than we had time to do when we were rushing to publish a report. That being said, I think we can do a lot more with the data, but the data will only get us so far. And we do need to get into those communities and supplement what we've done on the numbers side with the sort of qualitative work of talking to people and figuring out what's going on. And just being able to pair those conversations with what we see in our research, I think is really valuable and sort of can focus our insights so much better. And I think, this is something we're building out for the street team this summer, and we're really excited to see what comes out of that.
And just to be clear, on the data, we don't get as granular to find out the turnout for naturalized citizens, right? Just the neighborhoods that have naturalized citizens?
Yeah, so I want to be clear about the data limitations. So we can tell certain things about individuals from the voter file that we obtain from the Board of Elections. We can tell gender, we can tell age, we can tell what political party they're registered to and what districts they're in or where they are, their census tract or their census block group or whatever. There are certain things we cannot tell about individuals, and that's if they as an individual are a naturalized citizen. We can only tell what's happening in the geographic area around them. So, we have to make sort of certain logical leaps from that just because of the limitations of what we know about people on an individual basis versus what we know about neighborhoods. That being said, a lot of research about election administration and voter turnout has actually determined that your individual characteristics actually matter less for your turnout than the people around you. So you might be from a group of people that's a high turnout group, but if you're in a low turnout neighborhood, that's going to have a bigger impact on your individual turnout than whatever your background was. So that's another way sort of into this question for us. I do want to say as a next step in our research, and our data manager is in the audience, and she's been having an awesome time doing this horrible assignment. One thing we are doing is we're creating a participation score for every single voter in New York City going back to 2008. So determining what elections were they eligible to vote in, what elections did they actually vote in. And we're going to get down to a more granular level than we did in this report where we analyzed it at the neighborhood level. Here we'll look at census tract, which is a little bit more granular. Based on what we're seeing from the preliminary data, I don't think our findings are going to be vastly different from what they were here. But we're going to take a look about, as granular as we can possibly get, and what are the demographic factors that impact turnout over the long term. Yeah.
And you do, I got to think.
First of all, thank you for the work that you did. I think it's absolutely fascinating about and hopefully contribute to getting more people registered and turnout. One of the questions I have is about the naturalization citizens, and I was wondering if you had, I know you're limited by certain the data that you're able to obtain, but have you been able to pinpoint which areas specifically for those that have some examples?
So what we've done in our work since this report is we identified neighborhoods with a high turnout of or a high percentage of naturalized citizens. So that's really 30% or more. And we cross those with neighborhoods with low voter turnout. And I know that I am not going to remember all of the neighborhoods off the top of my head. And maybe someone can help me out. But they're primarily in South Brooklyn and parts of Queens. So, for example, South Brooklyn always has the lowest voter turnout, like in any election, with the exception of one neighborhood that's an outlier. But this is like really the Brighton Beach area, primarily the Russian community, where 50% of this neighborhood is naturalized. So it's a really interesting pattern in that neighborhood. And then you have sort of Bensonhurst East and West, where you have Chinese-speaking populations, and like some percentage are also Spanish-speaking populations. So we want to do more work in that area of like what are the barriers there. I'm going to forget the Queens neighborhoods because I am from Brooklyn. Yeah, now Sabrina's trying to remember as well. But there are for example, one neighborhood is in the Flushing area where you have a high percentage of Chinese speakers. And then there are a couple others. One neighborhood was particularly interesting, and is it Homecrest? Homecrest, yeah. Where it's definitely not a language barrier because the population there is Guyanese. And there's a high percentage of naturalized Guyanese citizens, but their national language is actually English. So it doesn't always cross with like, a particular language or something like that, but we are doing more research into these communities. You have them? Yeah.
So I could just share them. So they're Bensonhurst East, West, Brighton Beach, Homecrest in Brooklyn, Elmhurst, Queensboro Hill, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park.
And I just want to note, when we talk about neighborhoods, we're talking about like a Department of City Planning designation called neighborhood tabulation areas. These don't like perfectly overlay with what we think of as neighborhoods. So I would say like there are areas around Flushing we would still focus on, even if they're not within the strict geographic area we're looking at. Or like Corona, for example, there are neighborhoods that are adjacent to the ones we've identified where you still have a high percentage of naturalized citizens and low turnout. It's just like this is a particularity of how the neighborhoods are drawn in the Department of City Planning maps.
Thank you. My coworker and I are from Assemblymember Brian Barnwell's office, so I go on and know, so the information on Queens is very relevant.
So if you look in the report, there's you can take this copy of the report if you don't have one, but it has a map that kind of will show you. I mean, it's hard to do on a static page. It's like, but you can see it combines the percentage of naturalized citizens with the voter turnout areas, and you kind of look at where those are in the city. You're going to have to use your great knowledge of New York City to know what that neighborhood is, or look at a different map. But I mean, you will be able to tell, like, oh, this area, you can by the colors and the size of the turnout, you can compare.
And I'll also make a pitch for our interactive maps that accompany the report on our website. So we're happy to share that link with you, where you can actually not only be able to tell the neighborhoods by hovering over them, but you can also drill down to the data and demographic factors in a few different ways.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. More questions? Comments? Do you have more to say about your experience? Okay. Well, thank you very much. So now we are open to testimony from anyone. It doesn't have to be testimony, comments or statements from anyone in the audience who would like to share either comments about the report or just general comments about the way voting is working, the implementation of early voting, or any topic that you would like to share with the rest of the group. If there's anyone who wants to talk, please join us up here. All I ask is that you just say your name. Great. Yeah. If you can just push that button and yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you to the Board of Assistant Advisory for having us today. My name is Iranis Grujon Berjo, and I am the Alumni Manager at Generation Citizen. Generation Citizen is a 9 years old national nonprofit whose mission is to ensure that every student receives an effective action education. And I would love to connect with your interns because I think we can do amazing things together in the program, which provides them with the knowledge and skills necessary to participate in our democracy as active citizens. Generation Citizen New York in particular is the flagship of our 6 national sites, and we provide an experiential student-led civic education to middle and high school students in all 5 boroughs of New York City. And this year, we begin an expansion in the city to Pawtucket and Long Island. Since launching our regional site in 2011, we have educated and empowered 23,000 students for lifelong civic participation through our democracy coach and teacher-led models. In order to develop youth as civic actors and ensure that their voices are heard and reflected by their representative, we need voting reforms that break down barriers to political participation and facilitate political participation for youth and all citizens. We have a couple of recommendations to the committee that we would like to put in front of you. The first one is to implement an online voter registration by testing with youth. We are excited that the city will implement its own online voter registration as that is more user-friendly, and 21st century approach also will allow this to happen. And to check and update the registration records through a secure and accessible portal. So one of the things that we want to recommend is if you do the online registration is to do it something that is user-friendly, but also to test it with the youth, because I'll be very honest and they'll let you know whether or not they'll be willing to register to vote through this application that is through the development process. The second one is to implement early voting to ensure youth can participate. As the city works to implement early voting locally, we encourage the city to ensure that early voting sites are accessible to youth. And Generation Citizen New York is happy to consult with the VAAC and other city agencies on this. And the last one is to register more youth to vote. And I believe this is part of the work that is already taking place, and we applaud it because it's really necessary. Also, we want to encourage VAAC and the mayor's office to work with Generation Citizen and other youth-facing nonprofits to register more youth to vote in the classrooms and through community-based programming, which I think is an attestament to what I'm hearing in terms of the results. Thank you. Any questions for me? Okay.
I actually have a quick question. So, I guess, I mean, really, we don't have very much say over what the early voting sites are, but I guess I'm interested in hearing what, to say what is accessible to youth. I mean, accessible to the disabled community is, one thing, but what would you mean by, being accessible to youth? What
so one of the things that is part of the work that we do a curriculum-based approach, and it's based on action civics. And the goal of the action civics curriculum is to provide the tools and resources to our students to do policy analysis, and not just like an online campaign or like a Facebook or Instagram. We want our students to affect change through a policy perspective. We have our students reaching out to elected officials. We have them working out at different, like doing real work, doing research, and actually asking for support for specific bills in terms of like sexual harassment, gentrification. They go deep into those topics, and not only understanding them, but like understanding which bills are supporting those causes, who are the representatives working on this. And this is done in the classroom with their teachers. And also we have another model that we work with democracy coaches.
So I guess when you say youth, actually, when you say youth, are you speaking like what's your age range for that? Is that kind of college age and in, or like?
We work with elementary and high school. We work with everyone. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's an action civics program, and it's based on our curriculum and in a specific pedagogy that we want our youth to understand the democracy process.
So not necessarily voting age youth is what you're
Yes, they're future voters. So we want them to learn early, because that's another thing that we noticed. The early that we introduce them to the democracy cycle, it's just not about voting. It's what entitles to be involved in your democracy. That's what we care about. And I think it's also reflecting, I guess I was hearing the gap. It's like, of course they're not going to vote if they don't understand the democracy side, how democracy works and where they are in terms of like this cycle of so many different campaigns and what is the role of them in participating in their democracy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Doug Iser. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I'm here to talk about our experience hosting a candidate debate for the Office of Public Advocate on February 20th at the Tribeca Performing Arts Center. I'm not only am I the Director of Government Relations, I also run a civic leadership program on campus. So when we heard about this opportunity, I was really excited about the opportunity to further engage our students in the political process, but also to position the Borough of Manhattan Community College as a civic institution that is interested in fostering civic dialogue and democratic participation. And so I brought the idea to our president, who was very enthusiastic about the opportunity as well. And we came here to an info session, met Jessica Steiner with New York One, and submitted a joint application together. And so we're really pleased that we were selected to host the candidate debate. As far as anyone could remember, it was the first ever candidate debate hosted on the Borough of Manhattan Community College. We have an interim president now, but the president before that even, who had been there over 20 years, did not recall us hosting a debate. And so anyway, it was a really great experience. I'm here to report out some of the really good news and the ways that we were able to engage our campus community in the democratic process through hosting the debate. In so many ways, turnout and participation really actually exceeded our expectations. We went into it looking not only to have our students and faculty attend debate, but to actually play an active role and to learn about the debate process and to engage in ways that they wouldn't just as an audience member. So we're pleased to report that we had 244 students and faculty that actually attended the event, and these are really just the BMCC students and faculty, because there was a separate check-in for the other partners that brought their people. And so we were hoping for 100 to 150, so we exceeded that, which we're really excited about. 13 of our faculty members either brought their classes to the event or encouraged them to attend to receive extra credit. And many of our faculty used this event as an opportunity to explore relevant social and public policy issues in their classes. Students were giving assignments based on some of the issues that they were researching related to the public advocates race. 8 of our students were able to volunteer backstage with New York One. We thank them for giving us that opportunity. They helped New York One with an array of tasks, including stage setup, candidate preparation, lighting, tech skills, and more. And we also had 3 student volunteers that were working at the registration table and helping check in the attendees. We were also given the opportunity to submit questions for the candidates, with which our faculty worked with the students in developing. Overall, we submitted 15 questions for the candidates to New York One prior to debate. Only one of these questions was actually asked. But many of the debate questions were very similar to the ones that were posed by our students. So they actually were doing their research and they were on top of some of the salient public policy issues of the day. And then after the event, 2 of our journalism classes were permitted into the green room, and they were able to interview several of the candidates as part of a class assignment, which was really cool to see. 15 students huddled around the candidates with their little recorders and their iPhones out, asking them questions. So it was an amazing learning opportunity for those students. So overall, hosting the debate was incredibly valuable and rewarding for our students. We're not only pleased with the level of student involvement, but really the opportunity for them to get that up close and even behind the scenes look at the debate process, and then also develop a greater understanding of the political process and some of the salient public policy issues. And then finally, I will say, in addition to these civic engagement outcomes, which are a priority of our college, it's also worth noting that both the City University of New York and the Borough of Manhattan Community College are focused on expanding experiential learning opportunities and preparing students for 21st century careers. And the many ways that our students and the campus was involved in this debate really helped us meet those strategic priorities. And so overall, we're extremely pleased with the opportunity. We thank Campaign Finance Board and New York One for partnering with us on this event, and we look forward to hosting additional debates on our campus in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have other members of the public who are interested in commenting on any part of their voting experience?
Okay, well, thank you again for attending this public hearing, and thank you, thank you for reporting on the public advocate debate at the VMCC. That was really heartening to hear. And thanks to our summer interns. And I think that we all get to go home early. The meeting is adjourned. Did you have something to say? Does anyone? Yes, please.
I do this often. I just want to thank the staff again because,
Yes.
With so few people, you get so much done, and it just puts a lot of other people to shame. So thank you very much for what you do.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you.